everyone is familiar with basics of GIS, although, but it will be kind of a revision of those concepts which we might have read a few years back or like that. So let's have a quick revision of these things, these GIS concepts. Um, so when we say GIS, am I audible?
Yes, please.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Okay. So when we say GIS, the thing comes into our mind is uh, means a set of system where we are connected with hardware, softwares, and geographic locations. So in simple terms, GIS is a connection or integration of hardware. And when we say about hardware, it is like we are using laptops or GPS, computers. They are all hardwares. And when we say software, so like you install QGIS, so that is a software which enables you to work on this in your system. So that those are the softwares in which we work regarding these spatial or non-spatial systems. And geographic system is which is related to the location, or we have the spatial information of the earth features. So this is a simple example. You can see that this image is depicting that where the Islamabad is, or Lahore is, or Afghanistan, Kabul. You can see this is a simple picture from the Google Earth image. And so when we say geographic, so geographic relates to the location. So you know the location on the earth. So that is geographic. And then when we say information, so information regarding those locations, that might be like name of countries, name of hospitals, or any attributes which you attribute to a particular location. So that is information. And when you integrate that into certain systems, including your people who are collecting the data, softwares, and then collecting the data from GPS, and all this integrated, and you manipulate that data, that is kind of system. So combining these three things, geographic and attributes, or and then a system where people are included, hardware, software, and everything is included, that, and you do manipulation, that consists of geographic information system. And in general terms, we have four broad categories of functions in GIS. So first function is data acquisition and pre-processing. When we say data acquisition or pre-processing, so that is simply, in simple terms, digitization, editing, projection, format conversion, etc. Because when you acquire the data, you use GPS, you go to field and you collect some points, and then also in your system also you digitize some polygons of some country or district boundaries, etc. So that this kind of data acquisition is the first function, because for any manipulation you first need the data. So under that data acquisition and pre-processing, there are few of the things like digitization and editing. So this is the first function. And the second function is database management, update, and retrieval. So database management is also very important in the functions of GIS, because even if you have the data, but if you don't update that, so for example, if you have country data set or country districts, but with time there are new districts evolved, and you don't update your country data or district data, so there is no use of manipulation or of any spatial analysis, because now your boundary is different. So you have to regularly update also. Or for example, if you are doing any forest conversion analysis or etc., and you have to update that, okay, this much area was having forest, but now this has been deforested. So that knowledge of updation of that area is the second function that GIS enables you to do. And then third is spatial modeling, measurement, and analysis. And many of you are very familiar with this, because I heard that you have experience in modeling and all this. But yes, this is also another function of GIS where spatial modeling, measurement, and analysis is done. So for example, you have time period or time series data, so you want to so land use land cover time series data if you have, and you want to see the trend of land use land cover change or dynamics. So GIS enables you to do that, and others are like network modeling, hierarchical modeling, and relational modeling, etc. Here, this simple example is given, like if you want to have the hazard area, which is means in this example, you can see that where the forest density is less than 0.5, and then the hazard for sex ratio is more than 90. So those areas I highlighted. This is simple query based analysis, but yes, spatial modeling is quite complicated in that way, but GIS enables you to do that also. And then the fourth most important function of GIS is presenting results. You have done all the analysis, everything you have done, but if you are failed to present your results in a communicated way, means in a good way that people can interpret, then there is no point of working. So you have to present your results in a relatable manner. So for example, here the map is given, so it can tell you that okay, this is the Nepal district population, and what are these color depicts. So you have the legends that okay, where the population is high or low. So low to high population is given here as an example. So it should be readable from the viewer's point of view, because everybody is not able to understand GIS. So that is the fourth most important function of GIS. So in GIS, there are basically two fundamental data types, that is spatial data and non-spatial data. So when we say spatial data, so that is in a geographical space, if you can see certain area, as I showed in previous example also, like wherever the Islamabad is, Lahore is, so that is related to the spatial data, which can tell you the location or specific geographical location of any area or anything. And non-spatial data is as the information regarding that spatial data. For example, then although you know the location, but what is the name of that location? For example, if you are searching some hospitals, so you know the location, okay, there are hospitals, but what is the name of that hospital, where you want to go? So these are the information regarding those locations is known as non-spatial data, or it is also known as the attributes. And you might be knowing that in ArcGIS also you must have worked. So there are when you see the attribute table is available there. So that tells about the information of the spatial data. So here I have given a simple example. You can see that I just typed in Google like hospitals Lahore, and you can see that when I type this, so you can see that the locations appear on the map with a red mark. So these are the spatial information which tells you where particular hospitals are. But how do you know which hospital is where? So below you can see the non-spatial information like Jinnah Hospital Lahore or Sheikh Zayed Hospital. So you can see that where the Sheikh Zayed Hospital is. Now you know that if you want to go to particular hospital, you know that where you have to go, or you have to take your road network. So in this way, spatial and non-spatial information works. And under the spatial data, we have two data models, and you might be familiar with raster data model and vector data model. So first one is raster data model. This example in the right side, you can see the figure. So raster data defines the space as an array of equally spaced or equally sized cells arranged in rows and columns. And each of these cells contains an attribute value or an information. So that is raster data, but the specialty of raster data is that each pixel or each area will be evenly spaced and with equal rows and equal sized rows and columns. And the spatial resolution of this raster data is defined by the size of cell. If larger the size, then your data is coarser. You will have less information for it. And if the smaller the size, the greater information you will have for a space. So for example, here you can see when you take the pictures from your mobile also, or this is a simple example. So this is an area from Nepal only, and if you see that the image is quite visible and quite clear here. But when you zoom this data, you can see the pixels, and these are equally spaced pixels. This is the example of raster data. And as I told that smaller the size, higher the resolution. So if your raster data is having smaller cell size, so for example 5 meter cell size, then you will have greater information for the space. But if you have coarser resolution, for example the fourth diagram here you can see, so your information of the geographic space loses. It becomes coarser and you will have less information about the space. But the cell size means what cell size you should choose, or what raster data of special size you should choose, that depends on your applications. If we have national level of applications, for example you want to map maybe water areas or like that, so then you need to choose the coarser resolution data or coarser cell size. But if you are interested to map the buildings of a district or of a tehsil or village level, then you might need to choose the small cell size areas or small cell size raster data. This is an example that how the data from the point level to coarser resolution changes the data type also. So this is an example from India. You can see that the first figure is this is the plant species distribution. So first is the plot level species distribution in all over the India. When you convert that into 1 degree grid, you can see the change in species richness also is different. So higher species richness are found in the southern region or here in the northern eastern region. But when you convert that 1 degree into again 2 degree data, you can see that now the species richness has been shifted, and the higher species richness is in this particular cell in the southern India or in the northern region of India. So this is how the spatial resolution plays a role in GIS also. And there are two forms of raster data. When we say raster data, there is continuous raster and discrete raster. When we say continuous raster, so you can see the left image and the right image. Although these two images are depicting the same, that is digital elevation model, but you can see the difference. And what is the difference? When we say continuous raster, so numerical values ranges smoothly from one location to another location. So you can see that each pixel will have different information of elevation here. This is an example from elevation data. So for example, temperature data is also a continuous raster because you have different temperature values for different locations. So that is a kind of continuous raster. And when you say discrete raster, so that will have means a broad area will have a singular value. An example can be land use land cover. So it doesn't change very specifically, but for a broad area you might be having a same land use land cover. For example, forest. So for a broad area you might be having tropical forest or broadleaf forest or maybe temperate forest, and many of the pixels will depict a single value. So that is a discrete raster. And the another data model is vector data model, and we already familiar with vector data model. It is represented by either points, lines or polygons. When we say point, so point of each object is defined by a series or a coordinate system or coordinate pair. So for point, you will have a single XY coordinate, that is latitude and longitude, but you will have a single latitude longitude. But for a line, it is described by a set of coordinate pairs. So for example, in the second figure you can see there are 5 points, and each point will have a set of latitude and longitude. So you can have multiple pairs of latitude and longitude. And similarly for polygons, but in polygons what happens is the first point and the last point will have the same coordinate system, because you will be starting from here, but you will end up again into the same point. So the last and the first point will have same coordinate pair. That is the difference. And you can see an example of all three all three vector data types, that is point, line, polygon, overlaid onto this picture. And we will also be doing an exercise regarding digitization, where you can digitize these three vector types. So there are topological properties of vector data model. So GIS enables you to work on these on these three topological properties, and these are denoted by 3C. You can see you can tell that by 3C. That 3C is connectivity, contiguity, and containment. When we say connectivity, so the information about linkages among spatial objects. So GIS enables you to link you to have the information about the linkages. For example, in this figure, you can see that although you will start from here to digitize, but it will have the information of to node and from node. So from node is from where you are starting, and to node is from where you are ending your digitization or anything. So these all information are kept in the GIS, so that you know the connectivity or adjacency of neighbors. So this is the first property, which is known as connectivity, and it keeps the arc node topology, that is from node and to node, in every means in polygon or in lines. And then again, the second C is contiguity. When you say contiguity, so GIS allows you to share a common arc. So for example, in this second figure, you can see that although there are three polygons, that is red, blue, and green, but they share a common boundary here. So GIS allows you to keep that same boundary. So if you want to digitize an area where you want to suppose you are trying to digitize some buildings that those are neighbors in each other, but they share the common boundary. So if you digitize that common boundary again and again, then you might be having different areas. So the use of this contiguity topology is that it allows you to keep the same boundary for all three polygons, so that you need not to digitize the same area again and again thrice. So that your area will also be not deviated, because if you digitize all these three polygons again and again, means this particular area again and again, you might get different areas, but because of this property, this topology property, you need not to do that. So that is another property of GIS. And then the third property is containment. So containment is geographic features cover distinguishable areas. So for example, here you can see that a bigger polygon means a smaller polygon is surrounded by a bigger polygon, and then again a bigger polygon. So for example, you have a national boundary of Pakistan, and inside that you have district boundary of Pakistan, and inside district boundary you have tehsil boundaries of Pakistan. So if you zoom in or zoom out, but your area will not disform. You will have means spatial integration between these areas, and if you zoom into that, so you will not have deformed boundaries. So GIS allows that also, that containment. So this is the another property of vector data model, that is known as 3C also, that is connectivity, contiguity, and containment. And you can see this is an example. When you convert the vector to raster or raster to vector, you might get some differences. And this is an example that the point, line, polygon. So point may be represented by buildings or any hospital, as I told you. So those are represented by points. Then when you say about lines are like roads. In vector data model, you will have these kind of features, but when you convert these into raster data, since the raster data is having equally spaced cells, so your data conversion will be like this. So even though you have smaller area for vector data, but in a raster data model, that smaller area might be represented by a single pixel. So those are some of the merits and demerits of converting raster and vector data into each other. But you will have a conversion in this way. And similarly, if you convert the raster to vector, you can see that in raster data, in this example, the input raster is like this. But when you convert it into vector data, for this particular pixel, you can see that how it converts the vector data and how your earth feature has been deformed or means changed. So these are some of the limitations also when you convert, but they help us in spatial information also and in spatial analysis where we need to convert them. And then there is a simple or this is a kind of simple differences between raster data and vector data. You can see there in the left side I have bulleted few of the points like data structure, overlaying, compatible with remote sensing imagery, etc. And you can see how the raster and vector data are compatible or non-compatible with different applications. For example, the data structure for raster it is simple, but for vector it is complex. Then overlaying in raster it is easy and efficient because you will have same size of each layer, or if you have same means for spatial analysis also the raster data is quite efficient. But for vector data it is difficult. It is not it's not that it is impossible, but it is difficult to perform. And then high spatial variability and programming by user. It is simple in raster, but it is complex. It is possible, but it is complex. And then there are disadvantages of raster data which are advantages for the vector data. So somehow they complement each other in different ways. And we can have different raster data and vector data file formats also. When you work for the raster data, you might see that they can be presented in grid format or TIFF format, image in IMG type format or ASCII format, HDF and NetCDF format, etc. These are different file format for raster data, but for vector data these are completely different because they are represented by shape files or keyhole markup language file, layer file, geodatabase, arcinfo coverage, etc. So these are different file format for two of the data models of spatial data. And now the non-spatial data. As I previously told that non-spatial data is the attribute data or the information data which is linked to particular location. So for example, if you see into the some of your tehsil file which I have sent you, so in that also you will have multiple information like what is the name of particular tehsil and what is the population in particular tehsil or district. So these are all the non-spatial information that is linked to the spatial information. So for example, in this figure you can see that this is the example from Nepal district. So you can see that population of 91, 81 and 2001 are displayed here. So what is the number of population? That is information, and that is non-spatial information. So that comes under the non-spatial data in GIS. And when we say this attribute data, there are two types of attribute data. One is qualitative and another is quantitative. When you say qualitative, it is further divided into three types, that is nominal, ordinal and binary. When you say nominal, that is related to names, as the example I showed, that is the names of tehsils or names of hospitals. So nominal means name, so that is related to the names. And then ordinal data is sequence or ranking. So if you are ranking for particular tehsil or particular district with population data, that is ordinal data because that population is in order, where it is low or where it is high, that is in certain order. So that is ordinal data. And third one is binary data. The binary data is again divided into symmetric and asymmetric data. So symmetric is both values are equally important, and asymmetric is both values are not equally important. So for example, when you say binary is mostly designated by 0 and 1 value. So when we say binary, 0 is depicting one information and 1 is depicting another information. But when we say symmetric and asymmetric, so what is symmetric? When both values are equally important. So what is an example of symmetric data? So there is an example like gender. So when you divide the gender like male and female, so you divide male as 0 and female as 1. So that is symmetric because both the gender are important in our analysis. So that is an example of symmetric. But when you say asymmetric, so either of the value is important for you. For example, suppose you are only interested in forest area. For a land use land cover type, you are only interested in forest area, so you give that value 1, and others are as 0. So 0 value is not important to you, but 1 value is important to you. So that comes under asymmetric binary data. And under the quantitative data, there are two types, discrete and continuous. So that I already explained in raster data type. So discrete is where you have definite boundaries. So for example, land use land cover type, so multiple area will have same values. That is discrete. But continuous is that each area or each pixel will have different values. For example, temperature or elevation data, etc. So this is continuous quantitative data. And the another third is date. So date is also stored by GIS. So dates and time in the format of like month, date, year, or hours, minutes, seconds, in that way. So GIS enables to store that also. That is also a kind of attribute data. This is a simple example of raster and vector data. So in the raster data, you can see that digital remote sensing images. So how to capture and update the raster data and vector data. So we have different examples. So for example, for raster data, we have digital images also, and these images we can capture the raster data from the Earth Explorer, or from any Earth Explorer data we can download these. And then another is digital aerial photographs. So you can capture the data from aerial photographs, and you can scan the maps and then digitize that. So these are all forms of raster data, because you are converting the already developed map and converting it into a scanned map. And then digital elevation model from images also is another type of raster data capturing. And then vector data. Under the vector data, how you convert the or how you import the vector data, that is, one is from GPS measurements. You go to field and then you collect the GPS points and then convert it into points or polygons. That is one type how you capture the vector data. And then another one is survey measurements. That might be land use land cover type, crop types, etc. Or maybe you are using census data or biomass data, etc. And then the topographic surveys and toponymy data from the atlases. And these are categorized as primary and secondary data. So when you say primary data is simply when you are just downloading the images, the satellite images or aerial photographs, that are primary sources. But when you are converting the scanned maps, that comes under secondary data information, because it is already a map and you are scanning and then getting the information. Similarly, in the vector data also, these topographic surveys or toponymy, etc., comes under the secondary, but or survey measurements, they come under the primary data, which you are directly getting. And then for the vector data, we have two kinds of digitization. So one means we have the digitization process, how to get the vector data. So under that digitization, we have two kind of digitization, that is manual and automated digitization. So when we say manual digitization, either you use tablet digitization. That is a old process where the user used to have a hard copy maps in GIS, and that in this picture you can see that there is a puck kind of digitizing puck, and you have to put the horizontal board in front of you, and then you start digitizing the lines, etc. But this is automated digitization, although it is not very popular and it is not very efficient. But for the boundaries, or if you have any boundary maps, not from the images, but if you have the line or boundary maps, So there is a tool in ArcGIS from where you can just extract these boundaries and do the vectorization of that data. That is automated digitization. That is another means significance of GIS. So and when you are digitizing, we might encounter certain errors also. So there are different kinds of errors while digitizing. So one is dangles. So you can see the first example. So dangles are like when you are digitizing some polygon or lines and they are not connected, so there will be a gap. These are known as dangles. And overshoot and undershoot. So overshoot and undershoot, suppose you are digitizing the roads and you want to finish this particular road onto this point, but it goes beyond this particular point, so that is overshoot. And similarly, you want to join this particular line to this line, but it doesn't get connected, but there is certain gap, that is undershoot. And there are sliver polygons. When you digitize the polygons or boundaries, and when you digitize, there remains certain gap in between. So then you will have this particular sliver digitization error, and this is not good, because you will not have the exact area and also the exact boundary of two particular areas. So for that, we need to also be cautious while digitizing. And then there are certain switchback, knots and loops error also while digitizing. And you can see that switchbacks are like when you because our hand is not consistent while digitizing. So so you wanted to digitize it in simple line, but it gets distracted and you will have this kind of error. And then knots are like knots, and also the loops. So these are certain errors while digitizing, and we have to very cautiously digitize also these things. So this is all about the basics of GIS. And then the other thing is coordinate system. So in GIS, we need to understand the coordinate system, because the data we are using, it demands the special location, etc. And how we define those special location is also of significance. So under the coordinate system, you might be familiar with the geographic features, and there are two kinds of coordinate systems, that is geographic and planimetric. So a coordinate system is basically defined by the measurement framework, so with which you are measuring the location. So one is geographic, that is when you say that, okay, this is the location, this is the latitude, this is the longitude. So latitude and longitude, so you are defining your locations by the degrees or angles. So that is geographic coordinate system or measurement framework, because you are measuring the locations with the degrees. And the planimetric, that when you are projecting your earth onto a space, two-dimensional space, and then your measurement converts to meters or kilometers or inches, like that. So that is planimetric. And then the other thing is the coordinate system is determined by the unit of measurement that I already explained. Unit is maybe degree decimal, or maybe meters, kilometers, etc. That defines the unit of measurements. And other measurement system properties such as spheroid and datum and projection parameters are other measurement systems, because you might have heard of WGS datum, and each or many countries have their own spheroid or datum system. So that's how in general we are using WGS system. So that is quite common. And so when we say geographic coordinate system, you can see that the Earth is represented by a sphere, and where the three-dimensional spherical surface to define the location, and a point. Suppose this is the point, and this point can be measured by latitude and longitude. So this particular geographic information system is defined by the prime meridian. So that is a line which is moving from north to south. So that is the center of this north to south line is known as prime meridian. You can see that the red line. And when you are placing these lines horizontally, and the central horizontal line that is known as the equator. So equatorial and meridional lines define the locations of different areas, and these vertical lines are known as longitudes or meridians, and these horizontal lines are known as equatorial lines or latitudes. And here you can see the example like the line of latitude midway, which I told you that this is the prime meridian. So that is sorry, for latitude midway. So the latitude is equator, and longitude is prime meridian. So prime meridian is so where these two lines meet with each other means the prime meridian and the equator, where they meet, that is the origin of this location and known as zero latitude and zero longitude. And if you go to right, upper right, that will be northern, and all the latitude and longitude will be in the positive. But if you go into the negative, means in the left side, then there will be negative longitude but positive latitude. Similarly for the downside. So that's how this coordinate system for geographic coordinate system is defined, and coordinate values can be specified by degree, minutes and seconds, or degree decimals. And directions, as I told, that they can be specified by east, west, north and south, and by the plus and minus signs. So if you are in the right side, plus plus, and here plus minus, and here minus plus, and here minus minus, like that the latitude and longitudes will be defined. And when we say projected coordinate system or planimetric coordinate system, as I told, so this projected coordinate system is basically presented onto a two-dimensional. So if you see the previous figure here, you can see you have the three-dimensional location, because you will have height also, means x, y and z coordinate. But when you convert that into the, so you can imagine that the sphere of earth, if you put it onto a lightened under a lightened bulb, and this is the earth which is kept inside a folded paper, suppose, and when you project it from the outside, then you can see that this particular figure, and when you unfold the paper, the earth will be represented like this. And now you don't have the z value here, and you have only x and y coordinates and the two-dimensional coordinates, and that can be represented by any unit of measurement, that is meter, kilometer, millimeter, inches, etc. So that this is the projected coordinate system. And we are mostly using the universal transverse Mercator, that is UTM coordinate system, that is a two-dimensional this projected coordinate system, and mostly now people are using this particular coordinate system. And the last one is the significance and the advantage of GIS is the map production or the process of arranging map elements on a sheet. So as we have talked about the raster data model, vector data model, etc., but presenting those all in a map format, that is also a kind of function of GIS. And for that we need the properties, the basic properties for map production are data frame. You must have a data frame, and you must have a title to make users know that what this particular map is depicting. So that is one thing. And then legends, and then scale, north arrow and coordinate system. These are basic properties of a map element or a map in GIS to present. So this was all about the basics of GIS, and now let's move into the applications of GIS. So basically I have bulleted few of the applications here. You can see that. So GIS is helpful in mapping and monitoring environmental impact analysis, biodiversity assessment, agriculture application, fire risk modeling, disaster management, hazard and risk modeling, and GIS for planning and community development, etc. So these are the few of the applications, and we can go through few of these applications one by one. And the first and foremost, in current scenario, we can see the basic application is like mapping and monitoring of pandemic. So I just took this snapshot from the Google. You can see that this is highlighting like active cases of COVID-19 in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So you can see that active cases and recovered and fatal cases in this particular province or I think district. And then overall Pakistan having the COVID patients like means COVID positive population is highlighted in the left side. So this is one of the most important significance and application of GIS, that how you can track and you can monitor these pandemics. This is one of the example. And then another example of mapping and monitoring is like urban growth. So you can see this is an example from land use maps of Kathmandu Valley, and you can see how within the decadal period of 1960s to 2000, how the urban expansion has taken places, and it is drastic in the Kathmandu Valley. If you see the drastic gain of urban area in this particular valley, and it has also influenced the forest area and agricultural area. So GIS enables you to map this all dynamics of land use land cover mapping. And this is the another example. So mapping vegetation type. So although we map the vegetation or forest and non-forest, but under forest also you can map the types also. You can see this was one of the part of my MTech dissertation, and you can see that different types like eucalyptus, mixed forest, natural mixed forest, popularis, populus deltois plantation, and tectona grandis, that is teak. These all different types of vegetation are also can be mapped using GIS. And this is another example of mapping, and this is decadal mapping in northeast Brahmaputra river basin, sorry, Mahanadi and Brahmaputra river basin. So this one is Mahanadi river basin, and this is Brahmaputra river basin for three different periods, that is from 85 to 2005. And then we projected this particular fourth figure is the projection for 2030. So you can see that how predicted for 2005 because we wanted to validate this. So you can see that for the different decadal period, how this GIS enables us to map different vegetation types, and then we can come out with the losses and gains, that how the trend of loss and gain of forest area or urban area, anything can be mapped through these applications. So for example, here you can see in Brahmaputra river basin, the green part in the river basin, although this looks very small in this slide, but it is a very big area. And we observed that this evergreen broadleaf forest was deforested. This much area have been lost within this decadal period. And the purple area, you can see here the gain in this particular region during this decades. You can see that this gain is in agricultural area, that is cropland. So this purple color is cropland expansion in this particular area. So how the forest has been converted to cropland, this particular patch of forest has been converted to agriculture or cropland. So this is how GIS enables us to monitor also, and we can then depict or manage these areas so that we don't lose forest in a majorly. Then this is another example application, that is fire risk modeling. This is an example from Nepal itself. So with this fire risk modeling, we were able to delineate, not we, but this is from the Martin et al. The source is Martin et al. But it enabled us to know where the severity of fire vulnerability is high and where it is low. So you can see here that higher fire vulnerable areas are mostly in the Tarai region of Nepal, and the lower are in the mountain region. And this modeling was done basically using this particular equation where they used LCR, TR, STR, these all variables they used, and land cover was used, and then temperature was used, and then rating was given that to particular area based on literature and based on the field observation, and then the based on this particular equation, the forest risk index was prepared, and then this map was prepared. And then another application is habitat suitability analysis. I observed that many of you are from environmental science or ecology or forestry background. So this is one of the major application in for GIS in habitat suitability analysis. So this is an example from Nepal only. For Himalayan black bear and leaf deer, you can see that the habitat suitability was mapped, where this red region depicts the non-suitable habitat for leaf deer and Himalayan black bear, but the green areas are optimal to suboptimally suitable for these two particular species. And for this analysis, the suitability scores were assigned. So these all were done in GIS, but the suitability scores and weightages were given, and based on those weighting factors, the suitability map was prepared. And this is another example, that is a risk and hazard analysis. This was done by Samantha et al. And you can see the simple equation, that is FSI. FSI is flood susceptibility index was prepared, and for that the FR was measured. The FR is the frequency of these floods. So for example, in an area, for the consecutive years, the flood frequency will be measured, and based on those frequencies for an area, it will be measured that how much frequently the flood occurred in that area, and that's how, if certain region is having higher frequency of flood, that will be given higher rating or a higher weightage, and where the flood frequency is less, so that will be given less weightage, and that's how this flood susceptibility index was prepared. And based on that, high susceptible areas for flood, low susceptible areas for flood can be measured. And this is similar kind of analysis, but for landslide susceptibility. And this Nepal is very prone to landslide region and landslides. And this analysis was done by Bibek et al. And the landslide susceptibility was measured by, you can see the weightage was given by this density of landslide within a class and the density of landslide within the study area. That's how the ratio was developed, and that's how the weightage were given. So you can see it is quite similar to the previous slide which I explained for flood analysis, but here for landslide, you can see the number of pixels of landslides were measured, and they were divided by the whole the density of landslide area for the whole study region, and then the low to high values were defined. You can see that here the landslide index values were given, like 0 to 3 for high region, and very high region were given 3 to 8, and then lower values like -14 to -9 were given very low landslide susceptible areas, and that's how the map was prepared. And then this is an example from India. Biodiversity analysis was done, and then the biodiversity richness maps were prepared. And this is the methodology. In the right side, you can see. So biological richness maps were prepared. Biological richness is where the lower richness, and the biological richness here includes all the vascular plants, ferns, etc. And it was measured using different indexes, where the disturbance index was also measured. You can see in the left side, the biological richness was measured based on disturbance index, and then terrain complexity, and then species richness, and then biodiversity values and ecosystem uniqueness, and then weightages were given. So wherever so for example, wherever the disturbance is high, so disturbance can be measured by the forest fragmentation or human population. Wherever the population is high, then disturbance might be high, we expect that, and also the forest fragmentation will be high, so those areas will be given higher weightage. And wherever the forest area is higher and having less population, those areas were given less weightage. So that's how the disturbance index was defined. And similarly, other index were defined, and then the biological richness was mapped, and then this map was prepared. This is just an example from Doda district of Jammu, but it was done for whole India. So this is how GIS enables us to analyze different variables and then give weightage to weightage, and then prepare a particular map. And I saw that one of the participants is from electrical engineering, so I included this slide. And I just read a paper that for this is from Adijoha et al. In 2015. So they have also mapped the electricity distribution network map and also the power consumption map for this particular area. So they went to the field, and then they mapped with GPS. They mapped the this what we say that monitor of this consumption of power, and then they have mapped this electricity distribution for their locality, and then how much consumption particular locality is doing. You can see that lower to higher consumption of energy can be seen in this particular map, where the dark brown color is showing very high consumption. So we might interpret that these areas might be having some official buildings where they are using much of the computers or like that. So we can know that these particular areas are maybe certain kind of certain buildings of these centers or scientific centers or research center where the power consumption is high, or some official centers. But the low consumption, wherever this is low consumption, we might interpret, I'm not sure, but we might interpret that these are simple house where the low consumption of energy is having, we have low consumption of energy. So that's how GIS is enabling us to map different sectors and different areas, as I explained in my previous slides also. So this is also an important application of GIS. So that is from my side. Thank you. And if you have any questions, now we can discuss.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure, please.
Yeah, I want to ask. I'm a bit confused that what is the difference between ArcGIS and QGIS? As you have explained that we can, as I'm working on urban sustainability assessment, so I need to analyze the urban sprawl, and I had to compare that with the previous years over a period of 50 years, 60 years, whatsoever is the case. So I want to ask from you that is it possible to do it through QGIS also, or I need to switch on to ArcGIS for that?
Yes, you can do it in QGIS also. The difference is only in the software interface. So both are software for GIS data analysis. ArcGIS is also a software for GIS data, and QGIS is also. The basic difference is QGIS is open source. One thing is that. However, the ArcGIS is licensed version. So if you are working, so suppose when I was a student in my MSc time, so I was not having any license version in our university. We were not having any this ArcGIS license. We were not having, and for our dissertation, somehow we collected the data and we represented in a very traditional way the maps. But if I would have known the QGIS, I would have represented that map in a better way. So one advantage of QGIS is it is open source for the students or for the non-governmental sectors. QGIS is very useful because you might not have, so for governmental sectors or for these companies, they might have the enough funds to for the license version, but for the non-governmental sectors or where they don't have funds, so the QGIS is very very good. And both are having this what you are asking is for urban sprawl expansion. You can map that in both the softwares. Both are having their limitations also and advantages also, but QGIS can do all the functions which ArcGIS do, but there is a limitation in the way that in QGIS we have plugins for different. So for example, in ArcGIS you might be having spatial analysis tool where you will have different tools to analyze, but in QGIS you might need to install that through plugins. and there are always updation of these tools in QGIS. So you might have a very good interface of QGIS, and I personally felt that there are certain functions which are quite fast in QGIS when you use, but they are not fast in ArcGIS. So there are advantages and disadvantages of both, and but both are feasible to do the same work. Only the interface is different.
Okay, so if we have learned how to use QGIS, it's easier for us to also use ArcGIS.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other question?
Yes, I have. Thank you, Poonam, for this informative session. Basically, I have two questions. One I have already mentioned in the conversation. I'm repeating that.
Yes.
Direction of some specific location is spatial or non-spatial information. My first question, and the second question is, what is the? Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. And my second question is, what is the purpose of converting vector data into vector one or vector data
Yes.
into the vector data?
Okay. So your first question, what was your first question? Is that direction is special or non-special, like that?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So direction in what sense you are asking, like a north direction, south direction in that way?
No, direction of some specific location. If you had given example of hospital, for example, location of direction of that specific hospital is like from my home towards the specific hospital.
Okay. Yes. So when you are it's tricky. So when you are following any direction, like when you on your you means we all use now Google Maps, and we are moving towards certain hospital through a certain road or direction. So so that track is that track is special information, because it is navigating you to a particular it is letting you to navigate through a particular location, no? So that is special. But when you but when you are following that direction, you might be following in the left side there is one shop, and you're following that, what is that shop, by seeing on the Google map, okay, this shop, so I have to go through this shop. So that information about that shop, or you have to go through that road, the name of the road. So suppose you're following certain road, so that name of the road is non-special information. Did you get my point?
Yeah, it's clear now. Thank you. Could you please answer my second question?
Yeah, and the second question is the use of converting raster and vector data. It is so. For example, you have land use land cover map, but you so suppose you are downloading any raster data from satellite. You are downloading any satellite image, but you know that satellite images are only giving you the numbers, no DN values. You must have heard. So that is only a number. You don't know where is forest area, where is certain particular kind of this maybe a cropland or urban area, etc. So when you digitize those into polygons, that this is a forest area or like that, so that is vector data, no? But now you want to do some spatial analysis, for example, for as I showed you that maybe you want to do a fragmentation analysis, that how much forest is degraded, or how much forest is going to changed from forest area to cropland area or urban area. So now you have vector data, and also you want to analyze with respect to climate data, maybe temperature data or all this. So can you do that with vector data, that polygon data? You can't do, because because the climate data you have is in raster format. So the use of converting the data from raster or vector, vice versa, is only for your analysis, because you might have one data in vector format, one data in raster format, but you want to analyze with respect to different variables, and variables here are like climate data or any other. So for example, you might have soil data, or maybe you have elevation data, and you want to see, okay, how the distribution of cropland varies with elevations, or some of you just told that biomass, they are working for biomass, and if you want to see that the how the biomass varies with elevation, so your elevation is in raster data format when you download from the any site. But if you have the vector data in the form of polygons, how will you analyze that? So you must convert that vector data into raster data at that time. Yes, of course, you can just classify the satellite images directly to the using some classifications like random forest or advanced algorithm. Then you need not to. But if you have vector data and you want to do certain analysis with respect to some vector data, or vice versa, then you must need to convert that. Did you get my point?
Yes. So basically, it's all depend on the scope of work and
Yes.
availability of data, right?
Yes, yes, of course. So, for example, if you have population data for example, you have population data for Pakistan. So, population data you have, whatever you have, that is district level, no? So, district level is means you have the polygon boundaries, and now you want to do that analysis of elevation with respect to that. Means I'm giving example of elevation because right now that is coming in my mind. But you can you want to analyze those population with respect to certain I mean, suppose elevation, so you can convert elevation data into vector data now, no? And then you can join both data, and you can see, okay, this is particular area is having this much elevation and having this much